What did you do on a Saturday night as a kid? If you were at my house, chances are you had a seance. As early as I can remember, we would gather around the dining room table, light a candle, say a prayer, and sit as my father began to channel messages from the world beyond. What else was there to do in Ohio? I thought everybody did this. I took it for granted that one could communicate with the dead and that this was a natural part of life. This was no parlor game. It was a spiritual hike into the unknown, where my father was the guide and the rest of us followed happily along, feeling safe and full of wonder in his care. Things that went bump in the night were fodder not for fear, but for animated dinner conversation the next day. Mystical encounters were envied and enthusiastically shared. Living with ghosts was a given, and we always had plenty of room at the table for them. In retrospect, my sisters and I probably came off like members of the Addams family to our prospective high school boyfriends. While not trying to scare them away, I believe my father rather enjoyed observing their reactions when the conversation turned to matters of the spirit, which they inevitably did. Take the night my high school boyfriend Scott was visiting. We were discussing life after death, communication with the dead, normal things. My parents had just returned from the funeral of my mother's cousin, Phyllis, whose death had been ruled a suicide, though there was serious speculation that she had been murdered. Because Scott's grandfather had also recently died, my dad casually asked him if he'd like to see if his grandfather would come through. Scott swallowed hard. Yes? It wasn't meant to be a trick question. The lights went out, the candle lit, prayers were said, and Scott's chair inched closer toward mine. Dad, in semi-trance, said, "Okay, I think I have your grandfather here." He described him in detail before passing on some messages to Scott. When the session seemed to reach its natural conclusion, we lingered in the flickering glow of the candle. The conversation then drifted to my mother's cousin, to her untimely death and the suspicion surrounding it. I watched my father's eyes narrow for a moment, as if squinting again into the spirit world. "My sense is that this was not a suicide," he said softly. As soon as the words left his mouth, there was a loud bang on the closet door. "See?" we all agreed. "That's Phyllis, telling you that you're right." "What?" asked Scott, looking as if he was about to make a run for it. "What do you mean that's Phyllis? Is she in there?" "Maybe something just fell." My mom laughed apologetically, realizing the nonchalance with which the rest of us had accepted the bang on the door as being a message from Phyllis. Then she explained how Phyllis's nursing uniform was in that closet, the one she died in, the one that still had her blood on it. They had brought it home with them after the funeral to preserve the evidence. Walking over to the closet door, she opened it and stood there like Vanna White, revealing everything was in order. Even by candlelight, I could see Scott's face grow pale as he watched her carefully remove a plastic bag from the shelf, knowing it contained the uniform. "Would you like to see it?" Mom asked. We could never prove what happened to Phyllis, although many people certainly tried. And I cannot prove that one Saturday night at my family's seance table began the long goodbye to my high school romance. But somewhere, ghosts are giggling, while others wait for justice. Truth is banging at the door. Let me out. Let me out.